and that is what is misleading about it, and they masked the edit. You couldn't tell that that response had been edited by NBC News.
Well, that was the counselor to the president, Ed Gillespie, discussing a letter the White House sent to NBC News on Monday. They fired off the letter after the network aired an edited version of an interview with President Bush on Sunday. So, we saw the interview. We've seen the responses. Jim, tell me whether or not you think it was smart of the White House to send that letter.
Oh, I think absolutely. I think that, look, NBC has staked out the position as the most left-wing of the broadcast networks, and their little cat's paws at MSNBC, such as Keith Olbermann and so on. So they've declared war on the White House. Why shouldn't the White House be fighting back?
You know, Jane, one of the arguments that NBC made is, okay, we did edit that, but we put the entire transcript on our website. It's the website of their cable, their cable station.
Yeah.
Is it the same thing, making a statement on NBC News and putting another thing on your website?
No, I think that was kind of baloney. But I think, what I thought was really interesting was the fact that I do think they have a quibble about the fact that they took out the part where he said he thought people's words should be taken seriously. That's why he said it about Adolf Hitler. He didn't mean it about Obama. I mean, you can believe that or not. But I thought what was interesting was that Richard Engel has been it was a very interesting and tough interview. And the fact that they went with that, and the fact that MSNBC and Brian Williams are now sort of the same thing in a lot of people's minds, I'm sure is not cheering to the people at NBC News.
Cal, one of the arguments that the White House had with this whole interview was that NBC News, after deciding to change, the first big announcement was we're going to call the fighting in Iraq a civil war. And then about a year later, it just died away. They made a big brouhaha about it's a civil war now, and then it changed. The White House says, come out and explain why it's not a civil war anymore if that's what you believe. Is that unfair?
No, I think it's fair if you're going to have a major announcement saying on the Today Show that we've decided to do this because we believe that's what it is. Then if it no longer is that, if in fact it was in the first place, you have an obligation to make a similar announcement that it's not a civil war. But look, what has taken the Bush administration so long? Just 7 months or so before they leave office, they're now taking on the media. Yeah. They should have taken on the media a lot sooner. I had this conversation with Karl Rove at the beginning of the Bush administration. I said, you can either leak to the New York Times and suck up to the liberals in the media and hope that they'll be your friends, or you can look for people who will give you a fair and balanced shake and go before them. They tried to suck up to the New York Times and the big networks, and they paid the price.
Well, here's the statement from NBC News. Richard Engel's interview with President Bush has been available unedited in its entirety for the past day on our website. Our reporting accurately reflects the interview, just as the White House does not participate in the editorial process at the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, NBC News, or part of a free press. In a free society, we make our own editorial decisions. Patricia, it still doesn't go to the heart of what Cal was just talking about. If they're not saying we're going to make the editorial decision for you, whether you call it a civil war or not, just explain why you've changed. Do you think that NBC has to come out now and make some kind of an announcement?
Well, I don't think they need to if it's the White House that's asking for it. The NBC doesn't really owe the White House an explanation as to why they're calling it a civil war or not calling it a civil war. Does it owe the American people? Because it's a major statement. We're in a civil war. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be very helpful to viewers to know that if, in fact, you thought this was a civil war, do you still? I will say the concept of a civil war was actually brought to Capitol Hill by General John Abzey when he was testifying to Congress to say this may break into a civil war. The Democrats ran with that. NBC made an editorial decision and a big announcement to go along with it. I think that they should come out and explain it if it's not. I really don't know where they stand on that. I think it's part of this conversation that deserves to be blown out.
You know, you can be making progress and it can still be a civil war. To my mind, Dana Perino's statement about I want them to explain, I mean, the fact is this war is highly unpopular. Americans don't want their children dying in someone else's war. That's why people are upset about it.
The other element of context here, again, as I was saying a moment ago, Keith Olbermann gets on MSNBC, right, an NBC subsidiary with a lot of spillover between the talent there, and calls Bush the worst president ever. He calls the Republican Party criminals.
And tells him to shut up.
And then NBC and NBC use him in their debates. Yeah. I mean, there's this shameless degree of outright left-wing partisanship that MSNBC
so they lost the line line between...
And of course the White House is mad, and of course Republicans are mad, and I think it's gotten so bad that Brian Stelter, who was a very plugged-in TV journalist for the New York Times, used to be a TV newser, actually had a headline, is NBC becoming a liability to General Electric? I mean,
but this is good for NBC. This is good for MSNBC. They want to position themselves left of center in the way that Fox with their evening programming went right of center and has a huge audience. As a result of it, they need to differentiate from CNN. They're doing it with Keith Olbermann. He's their biggest ratings get. It's a risk if you want to always be taken.
There you have it, folks. The Democrat says MSNBC is deliberately
I am absolutely not a Democrat. I'm saying it's a business decision, and it's a good one.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
All right, we've got to take a break. But first, if you want to hear what we're talking about during the commercial break, go to our website, foxnews.com/FoxNewsWatch. We'll be back in 2 minutes with this.